Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Another Facebook
Oh,
Live.
my Lord.
So one of
Pressure's on.
the things that's been coming up a lot in our coaching sessions, which is pretty understandable, is people asking questions about how to deal with conflict in their relationships. And so we thought we would talk about it today.
Isn't that pretty much the only thing that ever comes up?
It's probably the main thing.
We wouldn't have a job.
But what's I think is really important is that oftentimes when people are thinking they need to address conflict in a relationship, they're looking at what the content of the conflict is about. And so that, for me, is one of the first places to start, is to help them see, like, when people are upset, the last thing you want to be doing is looking at what the fight is about or what the conflict is over, because you're not going to be able to see it clearly. The second thing that I think is really important for people to understand is that conflict doesn't mean anything about the relationship. It's not even a predictor for people breaking up. There's been a lot of research done by this, by John Gottman, and conflict is not a predictor for divorce. And for me, it's really important to not add on layers of meaning to what the conflict means about the relationship, because then that just increases the upset and the distress that people are experiencing. So if you're able to kind of understand that conflict is normal, it happens to everybody. It certainly happens with Angus and I.
Because you're really annoying.
For that reason only, of course. That it's part of what happens when people are in intimate relationships together. And so when it's seen as something that is normal and that we can learn and grow from, it's so much easier to be on that learning curve then with the conflict.
So what happens when you annoy me? What should I do? well, okay.
I'll answer that question.
Okay, go ahead.
So when Angus is annoyed, he will automatically think, he will automatically think Rohini's being annoying, right?
Yes.
And so in his mind, I am the source of his upset. And when it looks that way, it's very natural for Angus to then, because he's upset and he doesn't like his feelings of upset, to try and calm himself, to try and feel better. He'll then come to me. I'm not saying you do this, I'm just answering your question. He'll then come to me and say, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't be upset, or you need to change that, or criticize. And then rather than me going, oh, thank you for that information, I'll take that on board. I mean, that could happen, but probably very unlikely. I will most likely take that personally. I will get upset myself, and then I will say, but if you didn't do this, I would behave this way. And there we go. We're off. So really, Angus,
yes,
if you were able to see that your feeling of being annoyed is coming from inside of you, that it's your feeling and that you don't need to fix it or change it by coming to me in your upset. If you were able to feel not scared by it or okay with it, then you'd realize that, oh, it's going to pass anyway. And if there was something to say to me, you could say it later on when you're in a better feeling state.
Yeah. So for argument's sake, when we were first together, and I decided, when you were obviously very out of balance.
Yes, I was actually very out of balance.
To go for a walk, that was actually quite a sensible thing to do.
It was.
Should I tell them what happened when I got back to the apartment?
Sure.
And you barricaded the door so I couldn't get back in? We've moved along. We've moved so far along since there.
I think I was 24 years old.
You were 24 years of age, and there were different times. But I absolutely 100% agree with everything that you're saying, and that our relationship completely did a 180 when we really started to embrace these principles and develop this understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And that now, I think for me, and I probably now very much am more inclined to be the more reactive one, I now get to a point where I start to see that my feelings are kind of like a barometer for where I am in my consciousness, let's say. So, and I now know more readily to not engage and as you say, not pile on more extraneous thought onto those feelings when I'm feeling out of balance. When I've gone kind of into that mode where I want to make you responsible for how I feel inside, there may be some kind of blind spot around that. And that's when I generally see now more clearly how my feelings are indeed a barometer for my state of mind. And that's where I'm now more inclined to sort of like, yep, take my hands off the controls, pull back, go for a walk, or do that in a way where hopefully I'm doing it in a way where it's respectful. I'm not just saying, I'm going out of here. I intend to just to withdraw. And that's been a real game changer.
Yeah.
And also that piece of feeling our thinking and not our external circumstances. That's another big part of the equation. That's been really helpful to sort of like get an understanding, develop an understanding around that, because I can see in the moment more clearly that I'm the one that's shooting myself in the foot by engaging at this point and reacting to something that, you know, that I maybe in the moment not liking about how you're showing up.
And also, if I get upset, if I'm out of balance, you're much more likely these days to be able to see that it doesn't mean anything about you, to not take it personally, and to just realize that I'm out of balance. And if you sort of don't poke me at those times, it's just going to settle.
Don't poke the bear.
Exactly. And we'll just move on.
And it's such a relief. It's such a relief to think that we don't have to go into some sort of mass processing exercise and address whatever issue is up. It's like it's impossible to do that, really.
Well,
in that state of mind.
Yeah, in that state of mind, it's never a good time to be talking about anything that might need to be addressed on a logistical level, because it's going to look really difficult when you're upset. And if there is something to address, once you're balanced, once you're in a good place, then you can talk about it with your partner, and your creativity will be there, your ability to see solutions, your ability to have an open mind, your ability to have new ideas and fresh thinking about it. All of that's going to be available, which when you're upset and distressed and hurt, that's not easily accessible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's much harder to get access to.
Yeah, I don't know about everybody else, but when I'm wrapped around the axle of my thinking, it's very hard for me to access any kind of channels of creativity to find a solution. And that really the key is just to realize that, yeah, this best addressed when I'm in a neutral state, because then I'll be at my most creatively productive.
Absolutely. So one, if you have conflict in your relationship, it is not the end of the world, and it doesn't mean anything about you or your relationship. So you can relax. Two, when it happens, when one of you or both of you get upset, if you're able to see it for what it is, that you're out of balance, and not look at whatever the problem looks like me being annoying, if you're able to realize, like, I'm out of balance, and then recognizing what's the best thing to do for you when you're out of balance, well, taking care of yourself, letting your mind settle, letting yourself come back into balance, and knowing that you will do that naturally. So you don't need to be afraid of any feelings of not being in balance. You don't need to be afraid of feeling hurt or upset or angry. These are all normal human emotions, and they will move through you. They always do. And the more you can get comfortable with the full range of your emotional experience, the easier it is for the feelings to be fluid inside of you. And so, yeah, maybe you'll be upset and angry one moment, but then 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, maybe longer, maybe less, you'll feel back to normal. And as soon as you feel back to normal, things look differently at that point. Your partner will look differently at that point. Your mind, your brain will be able to think better at that point. When we're upset, our brain doesn't function properly. So all of that works against you when you're upset. If you're trying to actually solve the problem, it tends to just create more of the hurt and the stress and the conflict. It tends to make the problem look much harder to deal with. But when you're able to see, like, oh, right now I'm just out of balance. What's the first thing I can do for myself here is understand that, and two, then take care of yourself based on what makes sense for you in that moment.
Yeah. There's really not much more to say. That's very beautifully put.
Well, bye, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us live, for those of you who joined, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Take
Bye.
care.